Kevin Knox is a 6'9", 216-pound forward who played under coach John Calipari last season in Kentucky. He's only 18 years old, turning 19 in August, and he's expected to be picked somewhere in the lottery of Thursday's NBA draft. So far, the most talked about, well-known wings that are expected to be selected in the earlier portion of the draft have been Missouri's Michael Porter Jr., Villanova's Mikal Bridges, and Michigan State's Miles Bridges. Knox has went very under the radar these past few months as a projected late lottery pick. But over the past few days, his name has been gaining traction as reportedly the New York Knicks are heavily considering picking him up with the 9th pick in the draft. Let's compare Knox to two other wings throughout this video who are expected to go between the 8 to 13 pick range, Mikal and Miles Bridges. Knox easily has the highest offensive ceiling of the three. He has great shot mechanics, has shown the ability to hit shots from behind the arc comfortably. He can hit tough runners or floaters over defenders due to his very soft touch and 6'9" height, which is 2 inches taller than both of the Bridges. Soft touch and a variety of finishing moves around the rim is something that should be highly valued, two things that Mikal Bridges heavily lacks himself, as he usually plays more of the role of a spot-up shooter that'll find easy cuts or dunk it over your head from time to time. Miles is a very solid finisher, but is more of a leaper and a power finisher than the crafty Knox. As of now, Knox doesn't really have the moves that I'd like to see him have at his peak of his career, but he has a lot of time to develop them. Although he's great with floaters, he tends to take too many sometimes, and he uses power more. Although he does need to work on the power aspect of finishing, I think it's more so impressive that he can finish so crafty as he already does than just dunking over people all the time. Knox has a ton of potential to become a great creator of his own shot. Defenders respected Knox's ability to hit from three-point range last season, and Knox was able to create his own looks at times if a defender was to jump at a pump fake, or simply give him enough leeway to make a move into a pull-up mid-range jumper. He was one of the better off-dribble shooters last year in the NCAA, and his shots always looked very fluid and the majority of his shots looked makeable regardless of how contested he was. The composure and consistency of a player's mechanics through pressure is extremely important at the pro level, something you see from the most elite scorers in the league. Kevin Durant and James Harden be the two prime examples. Whether it's a wide open pull-up or a heavily contested step back, their shots always look pretty much about the same. Knox was not always able to create his own shots, and sometimes he struggled to make moves and beat defenders due to his decent to average ball handling. This summer, he's emphasized how much he's been working on his ball handling skills and has shown it off in some of the pre-draft workouts that have been posted on YouTube. Then again, they're just workout videos. That's nowhere near the pressure he'll feel the second he steps onto the NBA floor. He's expressed how he wants to be a reliable pick-and-roll ball handler in an interview with ESPN.
When I get to the next level in the NBA, I want to be able to handle the ball a lot in the pick and rolls. That's what I want to do. Be able to make reads, be able to make plays, make winning plays out of the pick and roll. I want to be able to be a primary ball handler at the next level, so that's why I'm working really well right now.
And to do so, he's going to have to really tighten up his ball control that cost him a few too many turnovers at Kentucky. If Knox could bring improved ball handling, great off the catch and off the dribble shooting, as well as a solid finishing ability around the rim into his rookie season, he'll be a really nice scorer for a team straight out of the gates with untapped potential on the offensive end. Of course, the one very important facet of the game that we haven't touched on yet is the other side of the floor, defense. Now, based off just watching film, what I see from Knox is a clear case of what many call a lack of motor on the defensive end. Knox wasn't anywhere near a horrible defender, but he wasn't great either. Knox was a bit slow laterally on the perimeter when guarding smaller and quicker players, giving up a few too many open lanes to the rim. He's not really a rim protector as he's naturally a true small forward, although he was not bad at applying pressure to defenders driving to the rim if he could stay with them laterally. In comparison to both Mikal and Miles Bridges, he was for sure the worst defender of the three of the last season. Mikal's an extremely versatile defender with a long wingspan who could block shots and also lock up players in the perimeter. Miles, although not as prolific as Mikal on that end, is really solid and can hold his own. But here's where we tie back into the motor of Knox. At times on both the offensive and defensive end, but most notably defensive, Knox's level of effort varied. But this doesn't necessarily mean you have to stamp down Knox as a bad defensive player. Standing at 6'9" and weighing 216 pounds, with how cohesive and comfortable he is with his awkwardly large body for an 18-year-old, he has a ton of potential to be a really good defender as well as an offensive player. Now, as watching Knox's game footage, the player that he reminded me most was Paul George. Due to this, I decided to go back and watch some of George's pre-draft workouts and college tape before he originally became a star for the Pacers, currently the Thunder. In a Draft Express interview with the projected lottery prospect Paul George back in 2010, the interviewer brings up how scouts have had questions with George's relaxed attitude and lack of defensive effort.
There's been some questions about your attitude. Looked like you weren't trying too much on defense, but you're telling me that you're going to be playing hard on defense all the time in the NBA and attacking?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to do what I did do.
In case you somehow don't know, Paul George is and has been one of the best defenders in the NBA for years now. Defense has been one of the best and most consistent parts of George's game. What the scouts said about George 8 years ago is remarkably similar to what they've been saying about Knox this year. A mock draft by Fox Sports' Jeff Goodman from 2010, which had Paul George going to number 16, the Minnesota Timberwolves, described him as an under-the-radar guy who has a ton of potential, versatile, a big-time athlete, and is more skilled than many give him credit for. I wonder who that sounds like. Two players that George was picked after in the 2010 draft that were vouched for as more NBA ready with more talent straight out the gate were Wesley Johnson and Al-Farouq Aminu. Now, I don't bring this up to discredit either Miles or Mikal Bridges. I think they both can and probably will be solid players in the NBA. But this is also a situation where teams may regret passing up on Kevin Knox because of the potential he has on both ends of the floor. Although they played two completely different positions and they don't have much similarities, the Kevin Knox situation reminds me of the Donovan Mitchell situation, where teams see exactly what they want in the workouts, but they've been looking at these other players for months upon months, and they're not accustomed to guys like Knox or Donovan Mitchell coming all the way to the top 10 all of a sudden. Being picked too highly or being slept on in the draft could really hurt or help a player going into their careers. If you're picked higher in a draft than expected, it could really help you out as you feel the trust in your team for picking you so high and you play better because of it. Or it could hurt you because you have all the pressure of the fans on you and they don't know what you have, so you feel like you have to show it off to them every night, and you fold under the pressure. Being slept on could hurt a player because you could feel undervalued and then you won't play as good, and also you may not get as many minutes. Or maybe with a lot of opportunities, a team can let you grow into the players that you're supposed to be. For example, Donovan Mitchell was able to get all the opportunities he wanted this season in Utah, and he became a really, really great player. But even Donovan himself said he didn't even expect to be this good straight out of the gate. You would think that a system like Utah, where you're not in a very competitive stage, having all the shots you can get is very beneficial to a player like that. If a guy like Kevin Knox was picked and came straight into New York, where there's a lot of fans who are very passionate about the team, as we know, it would really show if Knox would be able to stand up to the pressure or if we would crumble in defeat as the fans completely dismantle him. Personally, I really think that Knox can end up becoming the player that Paul George is today. Obviously, they're not exact duplicates of each other. I don't expect the same exact thing. I don't know if Knox will be as good as an offensive or defensive player, but something very, very similar. I'd personally say that Knox has even more potential in the offensive end than George does, but I don't know if he'll be as good as a defender. All I know is regardless if Knox does follow on the same path that George and becomes a really good defensive player after having a lack of motor in the defensive end while in college, no matter what, Knox is a really good offensive player straight out the gates and has a ton of potential on that end. I think at the least, when he gets in the league, he'll be a beneficial offensive player and solid to decent defensive player, kind of like a Harrison Barnes. Remember, Knox is still just 18 years old. He doesn't turn 19 until August. Once again, in comparison to Mikal and Miles Bridges, when all of them go into their first NBA games, Mikal will be 22, Miles will be 20, and Knox will be just 19. Mikal Bridges does look like a great player, and so does Miles, but you gotta take into account how Mikal's been there at Villanova for 4 years, as he redshirted his first year and then played 3. Miles has also played 2 years, while Knox has only played 1 and is still just 19 years old with all the talent that he already has, all the offensive versatility and defensive versatility and potential. The thing is, with Knox this year, I could already see him making a huge impact in his first year and surprising the whole world, kind of like Kristaps Porzingis did in his first year. But that's really it. Let me know what you think about Kevin Knox, if you agree with everything I said in this video, if you think he'll be as good as I think he'll be. Let me know if you think he's the biggest sleeper in the draft, or is there someone else I haven't mentioned. But that's about it. Cut.